Yeah, ma'am, we cannot see your maybe video if you can.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. Uh, all right. A very good evening to everyone who have gathered here for this edition of Tecton Talk. I welcome you all to this event. I extend a very warm welcome to our guest speaker of the day, Martin Duplantier from Martin Duplantier Architects in Paris. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to deliver this Tecton talk tonight. As most of you know, the Tecton talk is a public lecture series that we have initiated as an extension activity of our Tecton journal. The journal is an academic journal, it's a scholarly journal, but it also contains a number of essays and interviews, etc., which are of general interest as well. So again, welcome everyone for this particular edition of Tecton Talk tonight. And as is our norm, usually during the Tecton Talk, taking an advantage of the fact that we have an eminent speaker in the house, we always release the latest issue of our journal. And I'm happy to inform you all that the latest issue, that is volume 8, issue 1, is now ready and has recently been uploaded on the website. So please allow me to share my screen and unveil the issue for all of you. So I hope you all can see my screen. And what you see here on the display is the Tecton website, and the latest issue, volume 8, issue 1 of 2021 is already uploaded. This is the cover page and this is the content page. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the contributors who have sent their essays, papers, reviews and interviews for this particular issue. So I will just click here to kind of just let you glance at the content of this issue. All right, and the cover page has the photograph of our student Tambat Rao, so I thank him also. I will now stop sharing my screen. I invite all of you once this lecture is over to visit the website and go through the issue, and please have a look at it, read it. I will stop sharing my screen, and I would like to invite our principal, Dr. Sudhna Mahimkar, and our guest speaker of the evening, Martin Duplantier, to do the honors of kind of symbolically declare the issue open or release the issue, so to say. So please, Dr. Mahimkar and Martin, if you would like to just say a couple of sentences each, to kind of, declare this issue as open.
Hello, everyone. There's some of the echo you have to block, I think that. Yeah, hello, everyone.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Neha was telling me how good she was technically with all the webinars since the pandemic, but obviously we've got still some issues. So no, thank you very much, Madam Smita-Dalvi, for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be among you today. And congratulations for this new issue of the journal. which I declare published and open, and I will be very curious to read the different contributors and different contributions, and maybe come back to you with some input as well next time.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Dr. Mahimkar.
Yeah, thank you, Smita ma'am. Thank you, Martin sir. And yes, we declare this issue as published, inaugurated. And congratulations, Smita ma'am, for all your efforts. And this is volume 8, issue 1, right?
Right.
We are inaugurating. Yes, so this is published now. And I congratulate all the contributors also and the whole team who has worked on this particular issue. So, and I'm of course looking forward to read all the articles, and congratulations to all the authors that your articles are published.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
so we can, I think, go ahead with Martin sir's presentation.
Yes.
We all are
Correct,
looking
correct.
forward to.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you, for doing the honors of releasing Tecton's volume 8, issue 1. Of course, now coming back to our main agenda of Tecton Talk. And I would here like to mention that today's talk is mainly possible because our faculty, Neha Korde, currently is actually in Paris and working with Martin Duplantier architects in Paris as part of the UDAP fellowship. So I also take this opportunity to thank and welcome everyone who are associated with this fellowship, both on the Indian side as well as on the French side. You know, if you are there here, I welcome you all, and you know, it's really nice that such a collaboration is taking place because one of my colleague is actually participating in this fellowship. And therefore, it's time to bring her into the picture, Neha Korde, who will now take over, introduce our guest speaker tonight, and conduct the session. So over to you, Neha.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm really happy because finally we are all together on the same platform. And I would like to now, I will not take more time, and I will just introduce Martin in a few words, and then we can actually start the Tecton Talk this year. So basically, I have been working with Martin since September, and I think he is, the best thing about him is he's like just one of the symbolically younger generation, and I think he's very energetic even while working throughout. So I will just take a few moments of you. Martin is born on the border of Spain, having Franco-Belgian roots. He grew up between Bordeaux and the United States. He earned his master's degree from HEC Paris in 2003, followed by his master's from National School of Architecture in Paris in 2007, and further specialization in urban design in 2012. He built in his experiences from China, Mexico, and Niger, where he learned and developed the method of earthen construction that uses no wood with the Akara Association. He began his career in the world-renowned architecture firms, namely with the internship at Geken Marg & Partners in Berlin. He then joined at David Chipperfield Architects in London, where he was in charge of the concept team for international competition team. Stemming from his this collaboration, the duo actually decided to work together on an extension project, which is HEC Campus, which was completed recently in 2012. And I think followed with them, he started working mainly in campus-based project, both on urban and rural context. And it really acted as a reservoir for people and ideas sharing knowledges. Martin has also worked on a number of projects at regional scales like Seafront in Anglet, French School Angola, Zhangjiajie bridges in China, the development of 23/9 hub in HEMC, Vietnam, the docks of Bangkok, Thailand, and other projects in Bordeaux. He has been also given the regeneration project on the border of Luxembourg and freshly rewarded project to develop 68 transport hubs and neighborhoods around the new Greater Paris network. I also congratulate Martin for the recently winning the prize last week. Many congratulations. Defining a singular approach in terms of production and creation, the practice tries to actually have a dialogue between urban and sociological issues. His practice largely dedicates its resources to research and experimentation that are framed by a desire to find feasible responses to architectural problems. Driven by the desire to explore the issues of the time, the rethinking of the campus ideal, the densification of urban centers, the rehabilitation of one pristine lands, etc., and the wish to enrich both his practice and approach, Martin became the president of French Architectural Association, AMO, to play a collaborative and collective role and improve the quality of new architecture. Today, his global vision for contemporary cities leads him to step aside and activate a larger spectrum through a commitment to the new carbon paradigm. I welcome you, Martin, and now you can definitely take ahead the lecture.
Thank you very much. Can I open my microphone? Yes, I can. Okay, thanks. So yeah, I'm gonna talk today from the roof of Le Corbusier in Marseille. As you can see, it was one of our urban projects around the Cité Radieuse with the UNESCO commission and different public actors. That was just right before the pandemic. And even if the introduction by Neha was very complete and great, I think I will come back a little bit to how I got there and what brought me actually to do architecture and to contribute in some ways to the city making. Then I will talk a little bit about the French and European realm, you know, the context here, how is it to be an architect, to drive a studio and to try to do our best to for social, environmental, and architectural issues, and then I will show you a few projects. So yeah, I kind of, you know, I was born somehow in an architectural studio, so it came to me quite obvious that architecture was a way of looking at the city. My dad is an architect, my mother is an architect, my sister is an architect. So yeah, I've been surrounded for long by architectural issues. And even if everyone, I think, I mean, most of us tries to make a statement at some point in the teenage years and to become someone and etc. So after coming back from the US, so as Nia said, I grew up in my parents were kind of hippies, and I grew up in a farm in the countryside. And then they moved to a larger city called Bordeaux in the southwest of France. And after a few years, I was a bit bored by the bourgeois kind of way of thinking over there, and I asked to go abroad and to explore another culture, another city, another way of life. And I was sent to another wine country. Bordeaux, as you may know, is famous for wines. And I was sent to Napa Valley in California. It's also very famous for wine, but it was purely random. And I stayed there for my high school. I graduated. I actually didn't mind really staying a bit more over there. But my French parents told me, well, hey, you know, we've been paying taxes for years here, and it's free education in France, so please come back. So I was a good boy and I came back. And since I was good at school, I didn't know actually what to do, but I excluded architecture, as I said, because I didn't want to follow the parental path. And there's a system in France called great schools, grandes écoles, which is a very elitist kind of way of selecting students. And then they go towards business schools or towards engineering schools, mainly. And one of my former professors told me, well, you know, you should go there. And so I started that process, and 6 months later I came back home and I did my coming out. You know, I said to my parents, well, you know what, finally I think I want to be an architect. And it was like a big trauma, but it came to me as something so obvious that I needed to share that. And so they've been thinking about it for 2 weeks, and then they came back to me and told me, well, you know, architecture, it's just a disaster. I mean, working in architecture is so hard that we think you should keep on doing what you've been what you've been starting, which is this great school selection process. And then you'll always be able to do both, either simultaneously or one after the other. And again, I was a good boy and I listened to them and I said, okay, well, you probably know the architectural sector much better than I do. So I'll do that. So I finished my selection process. I got to HEC, which is the #1 business school in Europe. And actually I came there and I went to see the dean and I told him, well, you know what, I think I don't want to be a businessman. I want to be an architect. Oh, great. Well, Martin, that's great. Amazing. You know, this guy, he wants to be a poet. That guy, he's making films, and the other one, etc. So finally, they were very open-minded. And I got actually my first architecture courses in this business school. I got some photography courses, some Egyptian studies courses, some, anything but finance and marketing. Well, we did some finance and marketing, but the thing was mainly about opening up our minds to the issues of the world. And when I suggested that I would do all of my internships during this business school process in the architectural world, in an architecture studio or about architecture, they clearly said yes. They agreed on it, and they even gave me some money to do so. And to do so on, we were 2001, 2002, so a while ago already. And I wanted to study rammed earth architecture. And in France, it was, at that time, it was not popular at all. I mean, people were just looking at you like, are you crazy or what? Rammed earth architecture, does it still exist? It doesn't work, it doesn't stand. It's, oh yeah, we've got some old houses in the countryside, but you know. There was the Johannesburg UN meeting about sustainability. So I was looking through that, and I found out that in Africa it would be very relevant to try to explore that construction method. And we created with other students an association called Akaras, which means build to build in the Tuareg language. And I joined them, and we started to do projects in Niger. Where is Niger? It's in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Africa, as you can see. And it's a place of encounter between the Tuareg people that come from the north and the sub-Saharan ethnies that are coming from the south. And actually the French, when they colonized Africa, They came from the south and from the north, but the upper north, from the coast, basically. And so they gave the power with the independent and decolonization process to the ethnies that were the longest, let's say, there. That means either from the south or completely from the north. And the Tuaregs, which were in the middle, and which are the people from the desert, independence in Tuareg, in the Tamashek, in the language, in the local language, means the start of borders and the cut of the Sahara Desert in different pieces. So their natural, let's say, wandering, the natural territory was cut into pieces with the independence process. So that's kind of funny that independence doesn't mean freedom, it means actually borders for them. So the only architecture that you would find is actually not the one from the Tuareg. I guess the Tuaregs are nomadic people, but it's some kind of a construction method coming from the south, where you have wood, where you can find forests and some rammed earth, of course, but a lot of wood. And that is problematic when one goes up north and can't find any wood anymore. So this is a picture of the mosque of Agadez, the one before, a very well-known mosque. And this is the view from the mosque on over the old town of Agadez. And of course, the surroundings, well, we can find a few trees, but it's clearly very scarce. And there's a huge desert, rocky mountains on the side called Air. In the 2000s, there's a big issue about the Tuareg population. There's been not riots, but a civil war with the Tuareg in the 90s, so 10 years before, and then driven by main droughts. There's a rural exodus that contribute to build slums around the cities, that contribute also to change the way their culture and their social background works. And there's also some kind of change, a large change in their activities, where they try to develop agriculture. And of course, they are less able to go from one side to the desert to the other one. So they tend to stay more where they are and live. And so these guys are excluded by the different governments from going to school, from education, from health. So we see here new needs in rural areas growing and growing, and in collaboration with another association called Association Tuareg, we've been trying to implement schools, health facilities, gardens, different architectural elements built on one place, whereas the population still lives under tents. So you have the housing, which is mobile housing under tents, and the facilities that are implemented in one place and that are, let's say, long-term infrastructures. And not to build anything, because I remember when I was 15 years old, I went with my French school to build a school in Ivory Coast. And we used completely old-fashioned plans from the 60s. And we built a school in concrete blocks, which is completely stupid, because once you've broken a piece, or once you've, once you have to extend it, or etc., that you don't have the material locally. The same thing with the window frame, same thing with everything. So the idea here for the Akaras projects was to make sure that we would get everything on site. And we came up with this idea of completing the initiative launched by Hassan Fathy in the 50s, so as Hassan Fathy, if you don't know him, he's a famous Egyptian architect, and he's been developing a very old technique, rammed earth old technique from the South Sudan, so also in the Sahara, but on the eastern part of the Sahara, where actually all the roofs are done entirely with rammed earth bricks, and nothing is, and no wood, sans bois, no wood is necessary, even for the windows, even for the scaffolding or anything. So that's how we started. We got we trained ourselves, and then the idea was to implement this technique locally and to make sure that some masons, local masons, would be trained as well and would take this technique and make sure that they could live with it. Maybe they could develop it by themselves. So here you see, for example, how a window is done, and how thick these walls are. And what is incredible is that, and this is a cupola technique, what is incredible is that in the Sahara, you have, depending on the season, we would stay 3 months, 2-3 weeks to get there, gather the different materials, prepare the bricks, 1 month for the construction, and then another month to make sure it would run well, and that there's no further maintenance to be done. And I forgot what I wanted to say, but the very interesting thing about climatically and thermically about these buildings is that they act as a huge buffer, thermal buffer for the inside rooms. In the Sahara, it's like 45-50 degrees during the day, and depending on the season, it can be 0, +5 in the winter time, or it can be +20 in the summertime at night, right? At night. So you have a huge gap between day and night. And these thick walls of 80 centimeters, 60, 80 centimeters, they gather so much calories that actually it evens and balances the temperature, the inside room, the in-room temperature. So very interesting. You would get there and during the day it would be fresh, and at night it wouldn't be cold. So yeah. So this is an example of a school and an agricultural bank on the right. Very, very easy. Very simple, sustainable. Of course, the only carbon that you use is to get the door and the windows, and they can repair themselves. They can repair them themselves. They can maintain it easily, and all the bricks are done with the earth, the rammed earth from the ground, from there, just like 20 meters away. Other examples of different buildings that were done by us and the association. As you see, smaller or larger. And then I went to that was a scale in China for GMP, so Gerken Mark & Partner, which is a very large architectural firm based in Germany. And I moved to Berlin and I worked there for a while mainly on Chinese projects, on stadiums, on large projects. And I must admit, that was tough. I mean, yeah, that was tough. You know, in terms of consciousness of what you do to the world with these very, very large projects. But here we go. I start architecture school finally in Les Beaux-Arts in Paris. This beautiful entrance of Les Beaux-Arts, and I managed also to get a semester to Tsinghua University in China. I don't learn much Chinese though, and then I go to Barcelona. Barcelona has a very strong urban design, urban planning department. They're also very good at construction details, construction in general, which Les Beaux-Arts is not about. Les Beaux-Arts is very arty oriented. And so I wanted to complete that by something a bit more hardware, let's say. After finishing all of that, I go to London to join David Chipperfield Architects, and I take care of different projects in different parts of the world, and mainly competitions. So we have a lot of fun. I'm there with people from everywhere. I still keep in touch, by the way, and we managed to win a few competitions. And after a year, I really feel that I work day and night, weekends, etc. That, you know, it's maybe time to start my own studio in France, and back in Paris, not with Amélie, but in Paris, it's true. Whenever, you know, I go abroad, I feel like having some fresh air, and I love it. And whenever I come back, I'm like, wow. You know, this French realm, it's very protective, and it's also quite comfortable. So maybe I will take this opportunity to share with you a few of the DNA of the architecture in France and how it does work. From architect to designer to architect, that's the title of a that's the title of a lecture that I did in Singapore, because I want to open the spectrum of action of architects, and we tend to be limited to a role of designer. And I think architecture is much more than only design. So in France, so a few digits, we are 30,000 architects, registered architects. 99% of them are, let's say, working alone. So you have a small number of architecture studios, and most of them are not very large. For example, in our office, we're about, you know, between 30 and 40, which is a mid-size kind of architecture studio in France. I would be in China, it would be super small. It would be even in the US, it would be small as well. So it's a country where we tend to provide work to a lot of creative studios, and that's very good. And I will show you how it works. And our clients are more and more private, and less public, but it's in general, let's say for everyone like this, because until the 80s, 90s, the public sector was very active, and they had no debt, and they could invest. They had also needs for libraries, for sport facilities, for everything, cultural places, and they would also tend to buy land and develop neighborhoods by themselves with developers, but only only to build a building and not more. Whereas now the private sector has clearly taken over. The public is still there, but just to decide to make sure that we follow the good direction and the good principles. But the public tenders are getting more and more difficult to get because they're less and less. And there were in 1977 a law on architecture, a very important law for us, because it protected and still does construction and architecture by requiring an architect for every building that is above 170 square meters. And it also requires to every single public authority to go through a competition to select an architect. And public clients are not only municipalities or the region or the county or the state, it's also all the social housing. We have in France about 30% of social housing. And we there's a law as well, SRU law, that requires that every single city municipality has to have more than 25% of its existing housing, in terms of digits, housing units, 25% at least have to be socially managed. So that's I mean, at the scale of France, it's quite a lot. If you compare it, of course, I always take Singapore as a good example because they have 85%. And when people tell me, well, social housing is communism, etc., well, Singapore, I don't think it's a communist country. I think it's even the country. It's having social housing is a very good competitive advantage for a city, for an industry, for a country, to be able to provide cheap housing, and qualitative cheap housing is something I think very good. And I'm very proud that France actually has this policy still ongoing. So public competitions, you understood, they're compulsory. There is no way to go through without. Social housing actually 2 years ago got a new law, and they try to bypass the public competition. So architects are complaining a lot. But this is how politics go. So maybe we'll get that back. Anyway, for now, they're out of these spectrum. And as for private competitions, actually, you would think, well, why do you need, if you're a private client, to do competition? Well, okay, not every single private project needs the competition, but for, let's say, even like 30 housing units or 50 housing units, so it's a small building, but the municipality usually requires to do a competition because they want to have an eye on it. They want to make sure it's interesting for the neighborhood. Everything is so critical, and they will even invite the inhabitants, the neighbors, to be part of the jury. So you end up being on a jury and trying to defend architecture, and you're talking to a butcher, a mechanicer, whatever, who's never actually seen an architectural project, and you have to defend it in some way. So it's a hard exercise, but very useful once you go forward, and you need to defend it towards any attack from the neighbors, when you have to submit your planning application and so on. So it's an interesting process that we're experiencing at the moment. The other fact is public competitions get fees. I mean, all the competitions usually get fees, but the public ones are fairly paid. They're equal to 80%, that's in the law. It should be equal to 80% of a schematic design, SCSD, schematic design phase. So the first phase of schematic design, because in France, we I mean, in this 1977, we also describes the scale, the different phases of design. And they're very, I mean, public competitions, even at the European level, France is like a big supermarket for architects. So it's very attractive for a lot of foreign firms that apply, because now we have a European law. So every time you want to call for a tender, you need to publish it European wise, which is a good thing. And so a lot of foreign architects come to France and try to get projects. And since the Renaissance, since François I, we love having foreign architects in France, even for a very small project in the countryside. The mayor is very proud to say, well, you know what? I selected a Japanese architect, an Australian firm. Yeah, and they come and they do 500 meters for square meters for a tiny school. So it does sound funny, but actually it's problematic. It's problematic because you have people who don't know the context. They have to fly over and over, and they usually don't master, because they don't always have a good partner. If you have a good local partner, I think it can work. But if they think that they could bypass that, then we might end up with a lot of technical failures, and they usually, what we say is that the French regulations is so tough that the best architects end up doing their worst projects in France. So it's not always a good example. Other specificity about France is, I told you, we try to push the creative studios. Our competition, something I forgot to say, is that the competitions are not open competitions. They're short lists competitions with usually 3 to 4 finalists. So you apply with your references, then they select between 3 and 5 teams, and these teams actually get paid to submit a project. And among these teams, usually there is a younger team, a team with that was created within the last 10 years to promote, again, young architects. And the Minister of Culture even has this AJAP label. So they select every year between 10 and 20 architecture firms, young architecture firms, to become labelized by AJAP, and so they get promotion, nationwide promotion. And I told you the French Realm is also about regulations and about rules and rules again, and if you forgot about it, rules again. And within these rules, there is also someone who is very important. You have no way of influencing him or her. It's called ABF, Architectes des Bâtiments France, so French Building Architects. and they are there to protect usually heritage neighborhoods or heritage buildings or anything that has to do with heritage. And as you might know, France has a lot of heritage everywhere. So basically, there's not many projects where the architect, the ABF, is not around the table. It's very hard to see him or her. She or he is responsible of the whole county with plenty of projects, and he or she is alone. And he or she is saying, well, yes, this I like, this I don't like, this I like, this I don't like. So it's like kind of binary discussions. So it's very dangerous because you might work for a year and a half, and then the ABF tells you, oh, no, this won't be red, it has to be blue, or this is too large, etc. And it's a very delicate aspect of building in France, because it's sometimes these architects of the Bâtiment France are very good, very constructive, and some other times they are frustrated and not always keen to work with you and to be in a collaborative process at least. So danger. And then I told you about the neighbors, about the local population. That's also something we love to do, the bottom-up process. So when we are urban designers, we take part in these consultation process. We do a lot of meetings, a lot of walks around on the site, exhibitions, I don't know, we build games, anything that could involve the locals with the project, and they could feel that they have their hands in the process. That's very important. You avoid a lot of troubles after that. Wide spectrum, yes. So my initial idea was to say, well, we should be like the architects a few centuries ago, not only caring about design, but caring about architecture in a larger sense, with landscape, with urban matters, urban design. And I tried to develop a few attitudes, a few topics that are these ones: global approach, with not only the investment approach, but as well the maintenance, and so the global costs, by bringing new building techniques. Of course, by talking about urban matters, we're talking about multi-scale projects. And when we're talking about urbanism, we also talk about social issues, inclusive approach. Then I started my projects through HEC. Actually, I came back to my business university, and I did with David Chipperfield. We won the competition about the extension of the campus. So the productive and the knowledge realm of the city is something that I really like to identify and to develop. Making it public, because the commons, the common spaces, the public facilities, and everything that can actually bring us together is a source of inspiration and a source of dialogue with the rest of the world. And so that's something we love to explore. And then finally, the architects world, as president of this architecture association in France. Of course, I have this role of widening the architectural spectrum to new paths and to care about our collective health, let's say, in the society. 4 topics: the city of the city. There's a new law coming up. I think in Switzerland it's already almost the case. In Germany, individual houses will be soon forbidden to be built. In France, there's the ZAN, zone de zéro artificialisation net, which means zero artificialization. That means, you know, if you build on greenfield, you're not able to gain ground on the green, and so you have to build over buildings or over areas that are already either a road or a building. So we care about rehabilitation, we care about upcycling, about strategies that bring less carbon. Nature in the city, of course, we are landscape architects as well. So this is something that is an ingredient in our projects. Hinterland, what does hinterland means? That's the I mentioned here, I'm referring to the links between metropolises, between cities and their hinterland and their countryside. We've seen that with the pandemic, how important it was, how complementary it was to have a lively countryside around cities that are able to, well, feed us, get us some energy, some production. The productive areas in France are mostly in the countryside. And we forget about it because we buy everything from China, but basically the rest of our industry is still in the countryside. So there are a lot of links that we have to rebuild between the cities and the countryside, and that's super interesting. And then the fourth topic is the adaptability, the flexibility, the fact that our project should be able to evolve, should be able to change and host different functions and different matters. 3 targets: biosource, so the organic materials, the prefab, because in France labor costs are so huge that we need to find ways to get it well done. And efficiently, with efficiency. So that means prefab for me, and that's also prefab and organic prefab. Organic offsite is also a way of reducing the cost, which is today probably one of the major, let's say, limits of the change of paradigm from concrete and steel to stone, wood, timber, straw, hemp lime, etc. Paradigm. So very interesting. And then the new typologies of housing, new typologies of offices, new typologies of schools, etc. So that's also one of our targets. A few images. We have a lot of projects at the moment in massive limestone. That's so interesting. It's so beautiful to visit the sites, production sites, and to see these construction sites actually going up. And we tend to work with timber slabs as well as a complementary option. The new Bauhaus, we applied for the European new Bauhaus. So as it happened 100 years ago, where you have designers, architects, thinkers, artists coming closer to the industry, I believe now is the time to do so as well with another kind of industry, an industry based on organic elements, an industry, responsible industry, an industry that actually takes natural elements, transforms them as little as possible. But we still need designers, we still need artists, we still need thinkers to transform that and actually make it grow and make it interesting for the real estate industry. So that's what we're trying to do with these panels. For example, these are compressed straw panels. They are between 30 and 40 centimeters wide. We compress the straw and we put a layer. So this is all offsite. We put a layer of 2 centimeters of rammed earth on both sides, and then we bring them on site and we assemble them. So it's 2D prefab. It's not 3D prefab, but it's still very, very efficient, fire protective, acoustically great, and thermically incredible. You see the production, the offsite production, and okay, and then some projects maybe. So we work in different parts of the world. I put the cross in India because I hope it will happen one day. And as I told you, I'm the president of an association called Architecture et Maître d'Ouvrage. It's actually not an association for architects only, and really not. It's a platform. It's a platform for all the actors around the construction, around the city making. So we try to have a balance between architects, public and private clients, engineers, even the people, I mean, hotel brands, or we even have Louis Vuitton and Hermès that are a part of the association, because they also build either shops, but also workshops in the countryside, and so they also need to be in contact with not architects, but with architecture. So it's not called architects. It's the association is really dedicated to architectural quality, and our main goal is to share the architectural culture. And to do so, we organize every month visits all around France, visits of sites, visits of completed buildings. We organize lectures and conferences on different topics that we want to push. For example, here you see a conference about land prices. How could we, try to create some conditions to lower the cost of land in France? Or the other one is which housing for tomorrow. So we have a mission of lobbying the government and pushing forward the best ideas to change the paradigm in France. And then we also organize prizes every year with another country in Europe. Belgium the first year, then Spain this year, next year is going to be Italy. And this association and this platform for the different actors of the sector is actually something quite unique. We figured out because I also forgot to mention that we do trainees for different public or private institutions, and we've seen, and we also do trips abroad, study trips abroad, and when we meet people in Seoul or in Chicago or in Berlin, etc., we figure out that there's no such an association, such a platform, a shared platform in these countries. So we've had a few queries in Vietnam, in Moscow, in Seoul, in South Korea, to actually create an AMO, a local AMO. We're about 2,000 institutions and firms linked to this AMO association at the moment. And we just came out with the FAIR label. FAIR is a So you say, you know what faire means in English, but it also in French, it means also to do, with an E at the end. So we can put an E, but the idea here is to actually include 4 articles in every private contract for architects. And these 4 articles are, for us, a way to make sure that the contract and the relationship between the client and its architect is at a fair level. So that's something that we're starting now, and we have great hopes about it. Okay, some projects now. So I didn't know what to show you. So I maybe you know, if any one of you has questions, etc., don't hesitate to tell me. Here there's a different selection of urban projects around Paris for the Agnières-sur-Seine. This one. We actually have in France a lot of grands ensembles, so great estates from the 60s and 70s that were built on the tabula rasa, let's say, principle, and it brought a lot of social problems to our cities. So now we're in a process of rethinking these great estates, and to demolish as little as possible, but to bring some new uses, new functions, and actually to reconnect them to the city. And that's a very long process, because you know they usually we lack a lot of housing units in France, and so most of them are very densely inhabited already. So it's a design process that takes some time. Then Mérignac-Marne on the right, it's around Bordeaux, and it's also building the city over the city on retail boxes, shoe boxes along a road, like very unattractive. But the city of Bordeaux decided to build a tramway all the way towards the airport, and along this tramway, they didn't buy land because they don't have, the public doesn't have money, but they do what is called a negotiated urbanism. Negotiated urbanism, that means that I want a tender. I come up with a plan that is shared with all the inhabitants, and this plan generates a certain number of functions, housing units, etc. And we tell all the landowners that own their land, they will be able to do that much or this amount. And then they will, if they want to sell, of course, we can't force them. And we can, but it takes longer, and it's not very popular for the mayor. So he tends to tell us not to do so, but to convince them to sell. And so this shoebox, stupid shoebox from the 70s, becomes a mixed-use project with nice housing on the top and maybe some retail on the bottom, or no retail, and some shared spaces, community spaces, public facilities, etc. So this is the process, and it takes also longer than if the public was buying everything and then building everything at once. Of course, this is a step-by-step process. Then bottom left, that was a project for Shenzhen, the city of Shenzhen, on 5 square kilometers. Here, they're only interested by buying actually concept from a European firm like us. And then we don't know anything about it. So it's a let's say it's a work of 5 months. We hand in the concept, and then we don't know anything about it. And then Reims Port Colbert, it's a brownfield project in a smaller town called Reims, the capital of Champagne, and 40 minutes away from Paris, in a beautiful industrial area. Some other projects, so maybe I will only mention the Cité Radieuse de Marseille. So it's, as I told you, it's a UNESCO World Heritage project, and we enjoyed a lot to go through all the Corbusier literature and to find and design and to find Corbusian typologies that we could actually slightly and in a delicate way revisit to build the city over the city around the Cité Radieuse. And other projects, I call that coordination, because this is also a role that I take many times, that is to coordinate, to design let's say the master plan, to design a part of the buildings, and then to coordinate the other architects around us, around the table. So for example, for the athletes village in Saint-Ouen, we had to coordinate 5 other studios. So we worked on a toolbox where, so after doing the master plan, we worked on a toolbox, and this toolbox would mention timber construction, would mention ceramics on the facades, but would also mention community spaces linked to a certain urban frame, a frame towards the city. So they had to work with these kind of topics or tools to generate different projects with their own architectural sensitivity, and that would give and eventually a result that is very interesting. Same thing with so that's also for the Olympic Games in Paris, and on the right it's for the Olympic Games, but for the journalist, the village of the journalist in Duny. Then a few projects. So that's a competition that we didn't win, but I like it. I like the scheme, so I wanted to share it with you. It's in Da Nang, and it's a park that is to be built. Because we wanted to create a city where the monument would be the park. That's, there are not many places where the monument is a park. Maybe New York, the Central Park, maybe. So here the idea was to take the opportunity of thinking the park as a shell for public uses, for recreational, cultural, sport uses. And as the zoo of Vincennes around Paris, it's a skeleton, a built skeleton covered by landscape. And under this shell, you have this series of different public functions, public facilities, a swimming pool, a place for music, and on the top, you get also some other public functions, a small cafe, an auditorium, an outdoor auditorium. And the result is, of course, that nature and the park, fake nature, architecture and nature become this monument surrounded by water. The water was already there, creating views over the city that are also interesting to mention. The only weird thing is that we were asked when I flight from Paris to do the presentation, and I got there, and then my local partner told me, "Well, Martin, we've got a problem." What? Well, someone came to the office and asked us if we wanted to pay to win the project. I said, "I hope." You said, "No." Yeah, sure. You said, "No." well, okay. Some stuff happens like that sometimes. Another project in Reims, so 40 minutes away from Paris, Port Colbert, right next to the city center. And it's brownfield, clearly brownfield, with a lot of industrial cathedrals, as you can see here. And this industrial cathedral, because Reims is famous for its cathedral, that's where all the kings of France used to get baptized. And there's even a royal path in the city. And so to echo this cathedral, we sort out all the interesting buildings and said, okay, there will be landmarks for the future neighborhood, for the future project. And by doing so, going through, of course, the history of the place, that's also a sector that is completely cut by a number of infrastructural elements like rail track, a canal, a highway, and so it's very hard to reconnect the different parts. But it gives an incredible atmosphere to this very central area in Reims. That is to become the innovative district of the city. So we go through a number of studies, a number of surveys, even for noise analysis, etc., environmental studies. And we come up with an idea that actually we shouldn't wait, 15 years, 20 years until, okay, the neighborhood now we can live in, it's nice, we have different functions, etc. We're in France, just to remember you. We're in France, we're not in China, so we go slowly, and to avoid to go too slowly, what we suggested is to do short-term projects, temporary projects, tactical urbanism. That means actually we've got buildings already, they are there. Well, okay, it's a bit chilly inside, it's not new, we've got some security issues, etc. But okay, if we just solve the basic elements, what can we do with them? We could do some cultural events, we could do a place for makers or startups, we could organize, I don't know, a restaurant or whatever in the summertime. We could do a lot of stuff. And so we started to plan a tender package where the private investors would be interested in doing the usual long-term project along the short-term projects. And by doing so, they have to finance all the soft, all the new uses, the new functions that will actually be very attractive once you know that you have a festival every week, every month over there, or you have a restaurant, a very cool restaurant, even if it's temporary for the coming 20 months over here, then it becomes very nice to live over there, and it creates also new uses. So this urban catalyst paradigm, which we try to bring it side by side with art, with culture, with events, and the mayor. That's how actually we won the tender by doing this pre-city approach. Okay. And then, of course, it takes time. It's not a huge city, so we have to anticipate the fact that it will take time. Okay, go forward. I want to show you some other projects. Then we have some workshops, of course. Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. So that's a project we co-won. I don't know how to co-win a competition, but we co-won this competition. It's in the heart of Ho Chi Minh City. That's on the footprint of the old train station, And the city is building actually a network of 3 subway lines that are connected here. And they want to build also a bus terminal. And in the middle, underground, we propose to have a shopping mall that connects both, and that could finance actually the whole project. On the surface, there's a long park, 1.2 kilometer long park. We're connected to the Minh market here on the right, and it's a project that we want with 0 AC and as little energy as possible. It needs to be also iconic, so we double the public space at the most central part by bringing up the park upstairs and by leaving downstairs a market hall. It's also iconic because we came up with these oxygen towers. These oxygen towers, these air towers, actually bring the air down to the underground areas. We filter the air, we blow it, it gets cooler just by the contact of the earth at -20 meters. And then it gets naturally ventilated through the exhaust towers. So I told you we have the double area of public space at the most central part, which is here, and so both are accessible. We handle also all the fluxes. It's going to be very, very busy. 4 stories, connection to the subway hub, to the bus terminal, and in between the rest of the different functions. A view from the underground to the overground scheme for the internal spaces, and this idea of having -23 plus 23 with the connection to the top. A work on the structure of the canopy, on lighting as well, and on this low and high tech. It's mainly low tech. We want it to be very resilient and very, very strong, and so we shouldn't rely on high tech. High tech is also only for the light that goes down with the with fiber ducts that bring light from the top to the bottom, and otherwise we filter, as I told you, the air that gets naturally blown to the underground. And it's a city that is quite polluted, so by getting the air at +23 meters, you get a better quality of the air. Then you have still to filter it. You refresh it by the contact with the earth, and then it goes blown up. So we did all of that with a consultant and some friends here in Paris that are very innovative in many ways. Okay, and then another project, the Docks of Bordeaux. So that's a major project for the city. That's to reclaim the docks, as many cities in Europe or in the world. Bordeaux was there, built there because of the river, because of its harbor. It was a bit of like a Hong Kong of the 18th century. Linked to the rest of the world and not having much contact with the hinterland. And it got very rich. It really developed a beautiful stone architecture. And then progressively, it was the harbor became more and more industrial, and it got fenced off. I mean, the city and the river didn't have any contact anymore. It was completely monopolized by the harbor. And I remember when I grew up in Bordeaux, I could never see the river anymore. And behind these fences, you have, as I said, a very interesting architecture all the way through the historical center. So the new mayor launched a competition on this 4.5 kilometer long strip between the facades and the river. And actually the ABF, so coming back to this ABF, Architecte des Bâtiments France, it was written in the competition rules that one should not plant any tree along, on these docks, because the beautiful architecture shouldn't be hidden by trees. That's a very old-fashioned way of thinking, I believe. But the team that was led by a very famous landscape architect called Michel Courageux, who died actually a few years ago, came up with an idea of gardening the docks. And in the middle of these gardens, they implemented a water mirror facing the royal palace, the former royal square. And this water mirror is actually something that moves every 7 minutes, becomes a fog, about 2 meter high fog, generated by these small devices that you see on the bottom, on the ground. And this fog progressively comes down and becomes a 2 centimeter layer of water on black stones, and creates a perfect mirror towards the facing the royal square. So very efficient. That was the first time actually in the world that this kind of thing was created. Worked with a fountain expert, of course, and what we didn't expect at all was that actually it would become the main playground for kids in the city. So it's used 24/7. You have all generations, all kinds of social backgrounds coming up there. So it's a very nice catalyst for the city, and a great public space for everyone. And then on the sides we have these gardens. We also taught the maintenance guys from the city to actually replace. It's very easy. It's a very agricultural method. There's a line. You plant one kind of species, along this line. If line A, B, C doesn't work, well, you can change, and you can actually switch the different plants as much as we want, as long as we respect these alignments. Of course, with zero toxic elements, not to mention. And then on the broader sides, we have Parc Saint-Michel, so St. Michael Park, where we took out the concrete. We took out the concrete docks. We left only the pilates and the columns, and we retrieved the natural shore with some sport facilities as well for the kids. It's a very let's say socially mixed neighborhood, St. Michael, and they didn't have much free space. And then it's also a place for art exhibitions. It's also a space for skate park, recreational areas, for markets, for even a sailing club was created in the center of Bordeaux. And then eventually the warehouses on the northern side were completely rehabilitated to get some central retail area, but also there's a university there, different functions. And this water mirror in the central part. So all of that was pretty good investment for the mayor of Bordeaux, with a population growth in the central district. Actually, the demographic trends were not good, were not looking good before that. People were moving out of the city, building, houses in the countryside. So that's very good. He managed to get people back. The tourism exploded. It got the UNESCO World Heritage label also. Actually, he did two major projects, these with the docks, and the second one was the tramway lines, because tramway is very efficient, because you need to revisit and redesign all this public space along the tramway line. So that's also a very good leverage to transform a city. And it became the #1 city in terms of attractivity. Okay, another project on the seashore in Anglet. That's a landscape project as well, that actually ambitions to create a protection for the cliffs. The water level goes up, the cliffs are getting weaker and weaker, and there are more and more people willing to go to these beaches, drive, park anywhere, and that also contributes to the erosion and to the weakening process of these cliffs. So we won a competition. It's always a competition, but that's the rule in France. And then we developed a project along the shore. I told you about HEC. That was the first competition and project that I won when I started. It was with David Chipperfield in association, and then I did another project without David on HEC for the housing part, and then the third project for the master plan without David as well. The first one was with him, and it's this academic building. An academic building that we could sum up with one building, one section, one detail, and it's very flexible. Inside, it's very clever. It creates intermediary scales within the building, outside of the building, and we avoided to have a 130-meter long building that you can see at once. Here you can explore, you can discover the different niches and spaces all the way. And then we reconnected the new campus with the old campus through a main entrance hall that is completely crossing the building. And we tried to focus on a certain number of details. And we worked on a raw concrete structure that is thermically very good for the summer season, because it retains some cold and fresh air. And we put our focus on one, of course, having a nice concrete structure, and two, having nice detail. So you see the handrail here, you see the false ceiling that is made out of metallic mesh, and you see here the entrance hall, the main entrance hall, which is triple height. And then we worked on the old residential buildings. Some of them, most of them, had to be refurbished. All the initial project was done by a modernist architect called René Coulon. All the buildings are on pilotis, the residential buildings on pilotis, and progressively the pilotis got filled up with any kind of spaces, community spaces, associated spaces, etc. And they didn't respect the transparency of the ground floor. So that was one of our targets, was to reconnect the park through these pilotis, and to work on the ingredients of the deep facade, of having for every unit a nice exterior space, as you can see here, and to redefine the what is the structure and what is actually a secondary input in every building. And then we created another new building, which is this one. So we took the same ingredients, the pilotis, the deep facade. We brought it to another, let's say, contemporary level by having more glass, more contact with the surroundings, with the park. We worked on the ceiling of these pilotis, which is made out of wood and that is very soft, that can host also different functions on the ground floor, the exterior ground floor. And then to have a very simple and, let's say, elegant detail of concrete, of glass, and of steel. The ceiling and the details. Inside, it's very, very simple as well. Another project, it's a mobility center for the Olympic Games. That's something that will be built through river logistics, so through maritime logistics. So all the different elements will be brought by boat because it's on the Seine River. And it's also something that is it's also a building that is able to host different kinds of functions and not only logistics and cars. Bordeaux University, it's a rehabilitation project for a large scientific and university, where we had to work on two things. One was recreating a intermediary scale between the lab or between the classroom and the city. Where do people meet? How do people meet? Where do you stand when it's I don't know, lunchtime, etc., beside the university restaurant, where actually we can get this interaction. So we created 3 plazas that you can see here. And second thing was how do we get how do we avoid actually demolishing these buildings? And how do we do with this brutalist architecture that was quite struggling, quite fragile when we got there, and we needed to make sure that by rehabilitating them, it wouldn't hide actually their weaknesses in the coming years, because that was a competition, but a competition with the construction company that was responsible for the maintenance for the next 30 years. And that's quite smart actually from the university, because we came up with a very innovative solution. And you see here, it's adding a layer of glass and air as the only insulation. And it wouldn't have worked, I think, if we didn't have the 30-year maintenance contract behind that. So this 30 years contract is actually the guarantee that we have to make it work. And we can be quite inventive, quite creative in terms of solutions for these buildings. So the idea was to put a layer of glass, louvers on the top, louvers at the bottom, and we open and close according to the climate, according to the sun, according to the temperature we want to have inside. So we try to be as naturally as hot, to create a microclimate, to be naturally as hot as Casablanca, so let's say as Morocco during the winter, and to be as fresh as Copenhagen, as Denmark in the summer. So this is the idea of creating a microclimate and controlling it very well by having sensors everywhere and opening and closing, ventilating or not this building. And by doing so, we can also figure out where the weaknesses are and how the building actually ages. And if you cover it by a stupid insulation, then you will never know. And you will also hide the identity of the building and the identity of this brutalist architecture that we like so much. And then some further images. So I've taken, I think, quite a lot of time already. Maybe I should show you a housing project because it's something that we might be interested in. Yeah, we'll go through these guys. A project in timber and in rammed earth. So for a famous company called L'Oreal, but that's not housing. So another project for campus in prefab, organic prefab, as you see. A small farm. Small hotel in Madagascar. Another funny project in Toulon with a developer. So that's also the other kinds of competitions when you have to team up with the developer and then you develop the project with the developer. And here he was crazy enough to follow us on this scheme. We have buildings on pilates that enable the building behind us to still keep the views on the sea. And yeah, and then we get incredible flats on the top and a skyline for Toulon, which is quite funny. And at the bottom we have the fisherman market, and above the fisherman market there's a small promenade where you can enjoy the view. Yes, some housing. So that's in Paul Bourget. Paul Bourget is in the south of Paris. I mean, within Paris, and we worked on a project where they demolished an estate from the 60s to completely reconfigure the whole neighborhood. And so we were asked to take part in this project at a small scale. I think it's only 47 housing units, so it's a pretty small project. And and we thought, okay, we should really avoid to be in the situation what we encounter today, where they have to demolish to build again. You know, so to try to avoid that, we want to make sure that the structure that we will build is able to evolve and is able to be something else. Maybe in 30 years, they won't need any housing anymore. Maybe they will need, I don't know, productive space or offices or a hotel or I don't know what. So the idea is to have a minimal structure. It's in concrete, but it's minimal. And then all the input, the fillings are soft fillings that you can take them out afterwards. All the separative walls are also lightly built. And so we have this skeleton, this idea of the skeleton, the fillings, and then large terraces with trees on it. We're not in Singapore, we're not in India, so it takes a bit of more time for trees in France to grow, but still everyone has a tree on its balcony, and I think it's something that we could actually offer everyone. So it's social housing, but to be honest, I think I've never built such qualitative project with my private clients. So it's just to tell you that actually building social housing in France is probably the best that you can do because the clients are very comprehensive. They invest for the long term, and so they are able to invest in quality. So here's some plans. We also have some community spaces for at the ground floor. You know, place for bicycles, a place for, you know, to repair your bicycles, to do some gardening, etc. On the ground floor, we also try to have always duplexes, so that they keep an intimacy, a level of intimacy, by not having someone just on top of them looking at their terrace or at their garden. And so that was at the end of the construction site here. An architectural expression that is the echoing actually the structural idea, the structural concept, with these skeleton and all the feelings that are softly reflecting the environment. And then the large terraces for everyone. We have wood on the ceiling, we have wood on the ground for these terraces. And inside it's very simple. It's just a lot of windows, beautiful views on the city, and wood on the floor. And then another building, I said when I started, City over the City. This is an example. This is a competition that we won in Paris a couple of years ago on an old rail track. The national rail track company sold the land with this old building, and the idea was to keep all of the building, not only the facade but also the slabs. And so we strengthened the whole structure to be able to elevate 6 stories on top of it. Lightweight, so it's a mixed structure of steel and wood, and to extend actually the slabs and to lift it up. We have the underground that goes actually very close to the building, so we also needed to insert some buffers to reduce the vibrations with the metro line. And then we have some interesting Soho typologies on the ground floor, and then it gives this kind of result. And then to end up with, that's another estate. As you see, we've got plenty of estates from the 60s. We call them photocopy architecture. They were done by architects who probably never came to the site. It's like 600 units done in the 60s. They all look the same almost, and they completely deny the context and they don't address actually anything. So here, for example, you have actually the back facade, which is facing the park, and the front facade is facing the rail track. So, well, we suggested to, turn it around by actually building another shell. And in this other shell, we have lifts, because it's mostly elderlies that live there, old people. We have terraces, and we connect to the staircases. And that enables every single unit to be actually turned around and to look at the park instead of looking at the rail track. It's very simple. It's also social housing, very cheap project, and finally quite efficient. And then for the rest of the buildings, they are only 4-story buildings, and we plugged some exterior spaces because they didn't have any balconies, anything. You know, they had only small windows, etc. So we suggested to build independent structures. We would plug it over the facade, open the facade, and all of that is done with the people living inside. So all the site, you know, it took us 3 years. So we did it, you know, step by step, you know, building by building, and we kept everyone inside. So we were in charge also of the site management. We didn't have one general contractor. We had plenty of different companies, construction companies. So we had to deal with the timetable of everyone, and we took the people out of their flats for not more than 2 days. So that was quite of a challenge to get this work. And there's also a strong dimension on an investment on public spaces and on the green and the landscape. And then we've got some new buildings that actually complete the typologies that we have in the 1960s buildings. These are more small houses, pilates for some of them. Well, this is a competition that we won in China, but I said that it would probably stop because I think it's been enough. No? In Changjiajie, so that's also UNESCO World Heritage National Park in Hunan in China, and so we propose to have some very geometric bridges, pedestrian bridges, with in every one a place to experience the void and to experience the spatial topography of the place. So you see this one has a main hall, and in the hall there's a net, so you can put yourself in the net and be a bit frightened by the topography, of course. This one is you can walk down the bridge, and also relax in another net underneath the bridge. And this one plays with the same system as the water mirror in Bordeaux, with a layer of water that completely reflects the surroundings. Yeah. Thank you very much. Maybe you have some questions.
Maybe I will come on that side so that there is no.
Okay.
Hello. Smita, ma'am, are you there?
Oh, yes, yes.
We lost it.
Yeah. No, that was quite fascinating. Kind of. I mean, both the things, to get an overall idea of how architecture practice is generally, what is the scene out there in France. I think you gave a very nice and lucid sort of an account of that, and then of course some of the principles that guide your work, and then lots of examples of the work. So it's quite overwhelming actually to see the whole range of your work. I mean, it's quite prolific, I would say, and I mean, I don't know, this covers how much time span, but it's quite prolific. And thank you for coming and doing this for us. So that was good. And I would also like to say that, that cross that you put on India, I wish that your, that comes true very soon for both you and for us, actually. So that was quite nice to see. Right. So, Neha, would you like to open out the discussion to the audience?
Yeah, I think if anyone has any questions, they can unmute themselves and just ask. I think I would just also like to say thank you, because I think this is also first time where I am looking at the whole spectrum when you actually mentioned about it. So I'm also working here since a few months, but it gives me a lot of insight, the overall profile of the office, and it is really very wide, spanning from the local material. So basically, when you actually started with the rammed earth, I think that is also, we very relate to the local architecture in the West. So especially in the Rajasthan. So I think we could really relate to the overall. So I think I would just open it to audience if anyone is having any question, or just please unmute and please go ahead and ask.
So while kind of people are warming up to this and gathering their thoughts to frame questions, so I would one kind of recurring theme, not one but actually two recurring themes or two recurring phrases that one heard in your talk throughout. One was social and other was public. And somehow, down the line over here, where we are situated, particularly in Bombay, somehow it appears that that the profession of architecture has kind of moved away from actually these two ideas, and of course there are reasons for that, but here lots of students are here and who are going to be kind of leading the practices in the future. So how would you what would you tell our students regarding these two ideas? Because for us, we tend to have a certain view of the West, of the Western world, steeped in capitalism and money and high power glitz and everything. And I think it's quite revealing actually for us to see a French architect actually constantly referring to these two ideas in relation to an architectural practice. So would you like to say something more on that?
Yeah, I think France is in architects. I mean, architects are around the world, I think, very sensitive to the public interest. And and for sure, France has a strong history in social redistribution, social spending, in social care, and in large public projects since probably the kings. The public projects have always been very, very important. So with the French Revolution and the establishment of the Republic, the public realm and the public space actually is something that is very tightly linked to our culture and to the fact that we live a lot outside. We live and we share these spaces. It's also not a mystery if the terrorists a few years ago in Paris killed the people on the public space and in these privately owned places open to the public, open to the public domain, because it is our way of living. And the French, I think Nihao could probably talk about it better than me, but I think once when everyone comes to France, it's something that is really visible, is that we love being outside and meeting people in a peaceful way outside. And if inequalities are too strong, if private interests are too strong, then we lose this, and then it doesn't work anymore. So yeah, that's quite natural, I think, for us. And I invite everyone here that listens to us to come, because it's this idea of the Western world being savage capitalism is clearly not something that we have in France. We would have this image probably for America or for the UK, but clearly not for us.
Right. And we should never make a mistake of mistaking the French for Americans.
I didn't.
Yeah, I think I missed that, ma'am. If you can repeat. No, you're audible. I think here it was mute.
Yeah. No, I mean, am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
No, I just said that we should never make a mistake of mistaking the French for Americans.
Yeah, sure.
So nice. I mean, I think that this whole idea that a privately owned space can have a public component, or rather should have, is something that is that's so relevant, what you said just now. And I think we all of us need to kind of write down this sentence and then think what it means and what it can mean. So yeah, thanks.
Liberté, égalité, fraternité. Right?
Yeah.
Liberty, equality, and fraternity.
So maybe continue. I will just continue maybe the next question would be that I think the whole shift from, you working in Nigeria and then directly shifting to China, how was that shift? I mean, how did you take it professionally also, and starting your practice? So
yeah, that's a good question. Should I open my
yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. Going from Nigeria to China, well, that's like going from an extreme to another one. But actually, I also understood that in developing countries, that's where the challenges are. The fast developing countries like China at the time. So that's why I came back a few years after, by spending the semester, a little bit less than a semester over there, to understand a little bit more of what was happening. But clearly, it's the way they developed their cities, and it is probably too savage and too wild for me. And I would probably appreciate now better the fact of working in China, because they reached a level, they're looking more at quality than only quantity. But at that time, it was wow, it was crazy. So yeah, I think that was a very interesting and enriching shift to guess that's what I should retain for that.
Okay, there is another question from Gino, my other faculty colleague. Gino, can you just unmute and ask yourself?
Yeah, hi. Hi, Martin. Thank you for the presentation. And Nalvi ma'am mentioned it was great to see this whole, the context of the practice and how you set it, the 5 attitudes, the 4 topics and the 3 targets, and then, the whole idea of the new Bauhaus. It was great to, look at that and then see all the work. My question is, there are 2 questions. One is, there's a sharp contrast between the early beginnings in Niger and the recent work that you're doing. So how do you look at this whole trajectory, and what were the key transition points because we're constantly evolving. So what do you think are the key points or situations that led you to where you are today? And another question that I have, if I can also ask that now, is in the presentation you spoke about positive externalities. If you can, and also this pre-city approach, if you can just explain that a little further.
Okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, Niger and what we do today. For me, there's clearly a loop. Saying that in 2001, 2002, no one would actually in Europe look at projects done in rammed earth. And today, I was again this morning presenting a competition around Paris and mentioning this rammed earth, and everyone was agreeing that it would be actually a very good solution. So it's good to be right. It's even better to be right. Share this ambition with others. The industrial. I mean, we architects are very small compared to all the actors that surround us. The industrial guys, the development, the developers, the authorities, etc. And we're extremely weak and small, but we have the ideas. And what we can do is to bring everyone where we want to bring them, where we want to lead them. And so that means that it's extremely long. It's a long process. And when I look back and I see that it's almost 20 years since I was in Niger, and only now it's getting naturally agreed that we can do things and buildings in rammed earth. Wow, it's crazy. I mean, 20 years. Luckily I started started young, but that means that it's the city making is full of rules. It's full of fences, of limits, of inertia, mental inertia, of financial inertia as well. And we are very, very small in that. And we can actually move things forward through small projects like the ones that we did in Niger, like the one that we are trying to do here. We're trying to build the extension of the studio with these straw panels. And but we're facing again another mountain of national rules, because the lobbies are so strong, because the industrial mafia is so big that it's another fight. And Rudy Ricciotti, who is a famous French architect, wrote a book called Architecture is a fighting sport. It's a sport of fights, because it's only about fighting. It's only about you know, keeping up with your values, with your ideas, and never surrender too much. Too much. Of course, you have to do with, but keep the line, and yeah, and we will eventually maybe go forward. But that's the new Bauhaus for me is a huge opportunity, and finally we have maybe a window that is open for new paradigm. That's great. I mean, it's very stimulating. And every time that we do a project, we do a small map of all the local actors, you know, doing straw, doing stone, doing timber, etc., to source everything around and to make as much as possible without the Chinese products and with the local products. I'm joking about China, but it's true. We've been importing way too much. So we have to, in every country, it's relevant to use the local know-how, the local materials and products. So I think this is quite universal approach. Maybe I didn't answer the second part of the question, which was
the pre-city.
Yeah, the pre-city. Yeah, the pre-city. So that's something that came up a few years ago, and that is more and more used actually in France, because we have a very slow, as I told you, very slow process of making the city. And it's also quite good to have time sometimes, because you can test things, you can test functions, you can test actors, users, and since we Europeans build a city over the city, there's always a space to be reinvented that already exists and that can be used in another way without much money. And what we thought was that to actually switch from brownfield, from industrial uses to a mixed-use city, then we could actually keep some buildings for 3, 4, 5 years at least, maybe longer if it works well, if it's interesting, if it makes sense, but at least this, implement uses, temporary uses, cultural activities, as I said, an incubator for startups, some F&B, can be anything, with a very low loan, with a very low rent, almost for free. And this is financed by a traditional project, real estate project. So if the developers want to come and do their usual business as usual, well, they need to finance the rest and the pre-city. And the pre-city, what we think is that in these 3, 4, 5 years, the permanent, the long-term project, the classical business as usual project will be built. So it takes, in France, it takes about between 5 and 7 years to be built, a project. Not the construction side, but all the things, the phases, the planning, permission, etc. In Europe, it's 7 years in average. In France, it used to be a little bit less. Now it's almost 7 years. And in the meantime, you can already activate the place by these temporary uses. And what we think is that actually these new uses, if they work well, then they will feed the long-term project, because the developers, the mayor, etc., will see that it makes sense to have some cultural events in this area, to have some incubators for, I don't know, the numerous startups that the city has, to have a festival, to have whatever. So this is actually an interaction between temporary, between short term and long term. And it's quite agile and quite, I think, smart to think that the master plan is never, should never be, let's say, realized, built as it was designed, because it has to evolve at some point. And so it's an ecosystem. So we're just trying to make the ecosystem better and less rigid, let's say.
There's also this other term that you used, positive externalities, that typically you hear, you know, economics people talking about it. So, I mean, if you can just talk about that a little bit as well.
Gino, I think I lost in the initial part of it.
No, this term positive externalities, you know, it was there in your, you know, your 5 attitudes.
Yes.
That you mentioned. That's a term that you typically hear from people in economics. So just wanted to, you know, if you could just speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, positive externalities. That's indeed an economic concept of something that is not only good for itself, but also good for the rest. And for me, that's the leverage of building a city. So it's mainly public space, but not only. Actually, at AMO, so the association, we have this prize every year. And one of the categories is the best urban catalyst. And the best urban catalyst, what does it do? Well, it creates positive externalities. It creates more for the other, for the rest, for the surroundings, than for itself. And I believe we have we have to actually bring this to the mentality of the different actors, private or public. It's not only about the functions of the square meters, it's also about these externalities. They can be social, they can be environmental, they can be functional, they can be for the life of the neighborhood. They can be very diverse. And I don't have a way to measure it because I'm not an economist, but I'm very interested in making sure that we can tick the boxes on these different dimensions, because we are also, as architects, responsible for that. And to be aware of it is already a good start, let's say. I'm part of, we have in France another association, a think tank about carbon, and we've done an exercise on different projects that are ongoing with the couple developer or private client and architect. And we've given them 3 tasks. They should look at their project to reduce carbon with a limited budget. Second task with plus 10% budget. And third task without any budget, more additional budget. And what is very interesting is that all of them, they came back to us and they told us with the no budget, they could still reduce it by minus 20, minus 30% of carbon emissions on the process, of course, the building process. So we said, how come? I mean, how did they manage to reduce by 20, 30% your carbon footprint on the same project without changing, I don't know, without reducing the size or the height or whatever? It's just because they had time. They had time to look for for better solutions, for optimization, etc. So that's also why I say that it's good to have time, because you probably do things much better, and so we should really care about it. I know that the world is driven by short term and by emergency all the time, and at least in China it's like the top of the top. But we have to take time, and actually the planet is there for a while, so we better take a little bit of time if we want to keep it safe for us.
Right. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Juno. Are there any other questions? I mean, I would just like to ask a very simple question to Martin, that, being energetic every day, how do you start your day? And this is just to change the maybe make the atmosphere a bit alive. That how do you really start your day? Maybe you read, or maybe you just exercise, or just run, because I see everywhere people are running in mass. Literally, I mean, gymming.
Yeah, I start my day tired because I work too much. No, how do I start my day? Yeah, I like to wake up with the cultural podcast. So I listen to a podcast about anything cultural in the morning, and I slowly wake up. That eases my day, and that opens my mind. So I love that. And then either I go running, or I go running to catch a train.
Yeah, I think that is great. I think if there are any questions more, or maybe ma'am, we can close the session. If I think I would just like to maybe ask Martin, how was his experience, just sharing your time with us. Thank you for that.
Well, it was very good. It was great, and I hope we can meet with some of you in the coming months, as I'll be coming to India, and I really hope that we can finally cross borders and meet again. So I'll be very happy to maybe extend the interaction at some point in India.
Thank you so much. I think one of the students just want to make the give your thanks, note of thanks. Vindhya, can you just take over the stage? Before that, Smita ma'am, you want to share anything?
No, just it has been a fascinating evening, and I mean, very good discussion. So again, thanks from my side, but Vindhya is going to do the honors. So over to you, Vindhya.
Thank you, ma'am. I, Vindhyavali, on behalf of the Student Council of PICA, am thanking Martin sir for addressing and enlightening all the audience in the meeting. It was a great honor to have you, sir. I would further like to thank the Tecton Journal, Neha Kode ma'am and Smita Dalmi ma'am for coming up with this event to help the students of PICA and all over. Thank you, Dr. Sudhya ma'am and the faculty of PICA for your time and contribution. Thank you to all the students. This event surely helped us build awareness and made us all learn so much more about the French practices. Thank you once again, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then see you all. Thank you so much. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you again.